Hi there. This is the September look-see for 2025. It's a look at what's happening in our world and what's coming our way over the next days, weeks, and months. And there's a lot of intensity this month. Even though we're headed in the right direction, everything is going in the right direction. So it looks like life will keep us reeling, though, as one surprise after another rolls through. So just be ready. I like to ask for a keyword each month just to see what it suggests for us. And this month, the word I heard instantly was dashboard. So this is a word that could be interpreted several different ways. So let's look at some of these. A dashboard in a car displays all sorts of information needed by the driver of the car. It shows how fast you're going and how much gas is left in the gas tank. So does this suggest that we get real about the speed of change in a civilization and realize that most of the time it's like cold molasses? Only once in a while do things really speed up dramatically? Is it telling us to keep an eye on the gas gauge and avoid running out of energy to shift in the ways we need to shift? Other things on a dashboard are temperature gauges, compass direction, time of day, and dials, all sorts of dials, with which to make adjustments of all sorts. So perhaps we should take note of the temperature of some hotheads. Maybe check our direction and consider the time of day. Are we going in the direction we want to go? Since time of day symbolizes what day, week, month, or even what era we live in, is this a hint that we are close to the end of an era and everything is about to change? Dashboards in software perform similar functions, but they focus on helping you manage your information, data, or project. So whether we're talking about dashboards in cars or dashboards in software, the dashboard as our keyword reminds us to manage and fine-tune the details of our lives while maintaining reasonable speed and a reasonable course of action as we move into the future. So that's our keyword. So let's begin. Actually, before I begin, I have had many more questions about why I am doing the look-see differently than when I began. And the reason is that the look-see is a teaching tool. There's no point in predicting things if people do not know how to use the information. And very few know how to pull out what is relevant information. They don't understand the implications. So I think it's more useful to combine the news coming at us and demonstrate how to look at that news, analyze it, and understand what it means for our future. That approach, plus a little clairvoyance, is what I'm hoping you'll get. This leads to the ability to look at what's happening, see where it's taking us, and then holding ourselves in a state of open readiness for whatever stabilizes into form and content. Later comes the willingness to help shape whatever stabilizes, but that's for later. First, the ability to see. So let's begin. Let's really begin. Number one, let's start with feral cities. Wow, feral cities. We saw some uproar and protest over Trump's use of the National Guard in Washington, D.C. There was also some protest when he sent troops to Los Angeles some months ago. Now, he's threatening to send the National Guard to a few more out-of-control cities like Chicago, New York, Baltimore, and Oakland. Actually, I think New York has had National Guard people for a while. Anyway, I'm reminded of something that QAnon said in one of the earliest drops. Quote, "The military is the only way." End quote. The military is the only way. We may find out what that means over these next months, because these cities that I just mentioned have been designated as feral cities that are deliberately being created to undermine the federal government. The U.S. Naval War College Review has an article that says cities can be labeled as green, yellow, or red. Green means the government structures in that city are effective. They're working well. The economy is robust and provides a good tax base. City services are working. That would include health services, water, trash pickup, all that. And the police are professional and responsive. That's a green city. Yellow cities have marginal control over their territory and are highly corrupt. The economy is limited, maybe decaying, and there are growing financial deficits. Services manage to provide only the most basic levels of health, water, and trash pickup, and police are frequently overwhelmed by criminal elements. Red cities are considered to be going feral and have entire sections of the city that are blighted and out of control. There's little industry, but a lot of illegal commerce. Services are intermittent and offer no guarantees of steady electrical power or water that is free of contamination. Security is non-existent, and violence is endemic and out of control. The conclusion of the article in the Naval War College Review is, listen to this, cities do not go feral because a nation is collapsing. It is the opposite. Nations collapse because their cities have gone feral. Nations collapse because their cities have gone feral. So I think this is what Donald Trump is trying to prevent. Number 2, voter ID has finally come to the U.S., but I think it's too late. Too many people no longer believe the elections are honest, and rightly so. We've not had honest elections since the death of JFK. In today's world, there is not really any good way to assure ourselves that the voting has not been tampered with. More importantly, there doesn't seem to be anyone worth voting for. The only ones who want such a job are elites that are only in it for the money and power, and they are quickly drafted into the puppet club. Anyone else just doesn't get in anywhere close to positions of power. We're at a time in our nation when we need a new way of thinking about leadership and a new governance infrastructure based on ethics, truth, and wisdom. Number 3, I received a text from one of the members of my cocolife.com platform that got me digging for more information. So I'm going to share the text. It read, quote, "Nepal's government has been completely overthrown. UK Supreme Court kicks out Starmer. Whole government system is in chaos in the UK. France voted no confidence in the prime minister. He's out. This is Macron's 4th prime minister. French government in upheaval. Japanese prime minister, who was for African immigrants, is out. Israel bombed Hamas in Qatar, and there goes the Middle East ticking time bomb. China pushed 100% digital currency, and the people are not complying. Paper yuan only black markets have sprung up. For the Chinese to reject this so quickly is an excellent sign, since they are viewed as the most obedient large population on the planet, and it's failing. Vietnam now requires digital IDs for banking. The government is in control of the people's fingerprints, facial biometrics, credit history, even medical data. This week, Vietnam erased or froze 86 million bank accounts. That's almost half. They only had 200 million bank accounts to begin with. Like, whoa. Let me say that again. Vietnam erased or froze over 86 million bank accounts that were not in compliance with the new digital ID program. For around 40% of the Vietnamese to not be in compliance is promising. There have been record-breaking protests throughout Australia and New Zealand, with disclosures being aired, and the same in parts of Western Europe. End quote. That was a heck of a text. So, like I said, it caused me to dig a little deeper. It turns out that Thailand is doing the same thing as Vietnam. In fact, they're a little further along in the process. No ID and no facial recognition or fingerprints gets you no access to work permits, visas, banking, no entry into the country, and no ability to leave if you're already there. Heads up to all those expats in Thailand and Vietnam. Recently, China forced everyone into all digital money. Without warning, one morning at 4 a.m., armored vans rolled into Beijing and closed all the ATMs. By 7:15 a.m., panic was spreading. All banks were offline. Many people thought it was a technical problem, but eventually it sunk in that this was a deliberate move. Merchants were told they could not accept cash or checks. It was digital yuan only. Overnight, everyone's relationship with money was forced to change. No discussion, no vote, no announcements. Vaults were raided and cash seized from all banks and hauled away in vans. People were told that their money would be restored in the form of digital accounts later. By 3 p.m., all financial apps sent out a message with a new screen telling people they had to verify their ID if they wanted to access the app. There were no other options. Everyone then piled into cryptocurrency, but the sudden increase in demand crashed the websites. And then China blocked those websites and the whole service went dead. So apparently, the era of cash is over in China, at least temporarily. All money is now controlled by the state. Within days of the changeover, all sorts of ordinary transactions were deemed suspicious and canceled, leaving people without options. Other transactions were simply denied. Reasons given: you're not allowed to send money to a family member who has not been verified. Or you have exceeded your monthly meat allowance, or exceeded your dietary controls. Wow. Any money you are trying to save simply disappears after 30 days or is subject to daily spending caps. So you can't buy a refrigerator or even or anything that's expensive because those are more than the caps, the spending caps, the daily limit. So none of these rules have been published, so people find out the hard way. There's been no mention of this dramatic change to digital yuan in China's mainstream media, other than a single statement on page 7 of the People's Daily. Here's the statement, quote, "The nation continues its advancement into intelligent finance," end quote. The nation continues its advancement into intelligent finance. Wow, that's it. There's a $2,000 fine for not supporting the change. Those watching say it's not a war on cash, it's a war on choice. It's about complete control. Interestingly, they also say it's about preventing collapse of the central government, preventing capital flight, controlling inflation, and preventing financial collapse. Yet, from the people's point of view, the move amounted to a total financial collapse. Now they are resisting. We'll see where this goes. Years ago, the little men in brown robes showed me a revolution in China that overturned everything. Waves of revolt moved across the Asian country like a hurricane on the ocean. The Chinese are highly compliant and have extraordinary discipline, but everyone has their limits. I have a feeling they are getting close to their limits. Number 4. A long time ago, I read a book by Doris Lessing titled The Memoirs of a Survivor. At the time, I didn't really understand what I was reading. All I remembered was that the book was about a woman living in a city where violence, gangs, and fear ruled. Essentially, there was no government, and everything about normal society had broken down. But she seemed to be stuck there and was trying to survive while raising a child that wasn't hers and keeping that child at arm's length emotionally. The eerie thing about this book was the feeling that she was writing about the future and of what was happening in the big cities. As I look into the future, I do see conflict coming, and it is mostly in the big cities. The people in rural locations don't seem to be affected as much, if at all, and I think this constitutes some of the split happening on planet Earth. The perception that those living in the cities will be deeply affected while those in small rural towns will come through mostly unscathed was backed up this week when someone in the TN consciousness shared a dream in which the world was divided into 6 equal quadrants. Was how he described it. He was in an area where people were firebombing and destroying. When he asked why they were behaving that way, they tried to kill him, and he had to run for his life. He eventually got to another area where someone offered him something to ease his hunger and told him they had heard about such destruction happening elsewhere, but such things had not happened in their area. That was the dream. So it strikes me frequently that the deep state's effort to run the world is just not going to succeed. They may think they have us in the bag, but that won't last. In the future, we will look back on this time and recognize that the deep state caused the old world to come apart, ironically clearing the way for a beautiful new world to take shape. Not theirs, but our beautiful new world. Number 5, I saw an explosion, a serious explosion that rose out of the middle of a busy city in the mountains. At first, I thought it might be Denver, but it kind of felt like a foreign city. I mention it just in case we see something happen around the last week of September. Speaking of Colorado, it appears to be in for a rough stretch, especially Denver, legally and financially. The entrenched deep state is about to be routed out, or there'll be an attempt to rout them out, something that will involve the Denver area and airport. Number 6, perhaps you've heard the term the Global South. This is mostly a reference to China, Southeast Asia, India, Africa, and South America. It includes an array of developing countries that were really never part of the West as we speak of it, even though many of them traded with the West. I mention this because I think it's important to see how power moves around the globe over decades. Everyone gets a turn in the power seat, and the Global South is now stepping up as the replacement for the West. In the same way that the U.S. was the most powerful country in the West, China will eventually be the most powerful country in the Global South, with Brazil right up there with it, and maybe overtaking it if there's massive change in China. Those of us in the West should not see ourselves as irrelevant, humiliated, or having no voice in things. It should be seen as our opportunity to take a break, evaluate our situation, heal, and clear the path so we can update and rebuild in a way that puts us in position to inspire and lead when our turn rolls around again. Number 7, the Kraft Heinz Corporation is splitting up. They merged in 2015 with the goal of becoming one of the biggest food and beverage companies in the world. Now they're getting a divorce. The split is scheduled to take place in 2026 and will result in each going their separate ways. This is a big change and an important signal to those of us watching. According to reports from the company, the split was a unanimous decision, but I know that before reaching this unanimous decision, there were some hard talks and come to Jesus conversations for those making the decision. They were tripping over each other. What was good for Kraft was not good for Heinz, and vice versa. While they are telling themselves this will allow each of the resulting companies to focus on a better bottom line, I read this as a double message. First, that bigger is not always better, because complexities emerge that were not foreseen before coming together. And second, that perhaps demand is falling for Kraft and Heinz because the people of the world are beginning to recognize that the products they produce are not real food. They are chemical lookalikes, having little to no nutrition in them. People everywhere are struggling with their health, and they're finally beginning to ask why. The answer is because what they've been eating has nothing in it that will rebuild and regenerate the body. What they've been buying in the way of groceries has only rebuilt the corporate pocketbooks. Number 8. The U.S. has announced that 6 countries around the planet should be avoided: Afghanistan, Burma, called Myanmar these days, North Korea, Venezuela, Iran, and Russia. These are all places where the U.S. government has interfered mightily and destroyed, or tried to destroy, the governments of those countries so they could install puppets and take control. I know that everything our government puts out is propaganda, and when I see messages from the government to avoid certain places, I always wonder if they don't want us going there because they don't want us to hear the other side of the story or the truth about what they really did, about what we really did to those other countries. So not only that, but some of those countries have so much anger toward Americans that it really isn't safe. Heads up. Number 9, let's look at a little news regarding the state of our planet. In 2019, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, put out a blog post saying, quote, "We are moving into a colder climate," end quote. We're moving into a colder climate. This was quickly taken down and erased, but some people saw it. Of course, their voices have been drowned out by the narrative pushing the story that the planet is heating up and it's all our fault. But it's not. It's not heating up and it's not our fault. And we need to prepare for the exact opposite of what we've been told. We also need to stop allowing people like Bill Gates and others to spray things that will block sunlight on our planet or we'll all freeze. We're going to need that warmth, not only for ourselves, but for the animals and the crops we grow. Plants draw energy directly from sunlight. No sunlight, no food. We also have a couple of big cycles showing up now that will complicate any narrative or sprays to block the sun. These are expected within the next year. First is the Great Dust Bowl cycle. This is a 90-year cycle that brings drought and huge dust storms to the grain belts of America. The result is no crops. Heads up there regarding food and growing your own. Then we have the slowing of the Beaufort Gyre up in the Arctic. It's up there by Greenland. This gyre keeps the AMOC, the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Current, moving in a big circle around the Atlantic Ocean, bringing warm water north and cold water south. When the AMOC slows, it gets much colder in the north and much hotter in the south. Exactly what we don't need when we will already be dealing with a colder climate in the north. Something similar is happening in the Pacific Ocean. The annual upwelling, that's what it's called, annual upwelling of cold water off the west coast of Panama did not occur this year. This is the first time on record that this did not happen. The cold water, pushed by certain winds, brings rich nutrients for coastal fish and helps coral reefs avoid heat stress, bleaching, and death. When this upwelling does not occur, the fishing is poor, and the habitat for ocean creatures is destroyed. People who make their living by fishing the ocean struggle. In addition to these changes in our planet's usual activity, we are still facing the prospect of a large blast of energy from the sun, which can have disastrous effects on the entire planet. This cycle is part of the micronova cycle, which can be big or small and comes around every 6,000 years. It actually comes around every 3,000, but it's minor, very minor. Only the 12,000 year points are pretty serious, and we're at that point. The micronova is due now, and scientists expect it to occur between 2030 and 2050. Don't be fooled by people like Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos saying, oh, we're just building a little getaway underground because we need a place to relax or retire to. The elites all know what's coming. And that's why governments around the world have built underground cities and huge tunnels linking them. They are hoping to go underground and survive. Number 10. AI has taken the world by storm, and billions of dollars are going into develop AGI, artificial general intelligence. I love AI, and I've said so many times. What I don't love is the ignorance of the people racing to develop it in spite of total lack of understanding of consciousness. I don't like the fact that billions of dollars are being spent to improve machines, while almost nothing is being spent to improve us, the people. I don't like the ridiculous amounts of electrical energy that will be needed to support even small-scale AI infrastructure, while the good people of planet Earth are being told they must be satisfied with wind and solar, which are limited, intermittent, and only partially reliable. I don't like the fact that we are building more nuclear reactors to support AI. Westinghouse plans to build 10 large nuclear reactors in the U.S. We are talking about building nuclear reactors to supply 100 terabytes of power for AI. But that is a drop in the bucket of what AI energy needs. If we really wanted to be competitive, we would need to produce 10,000 terawatts of power annually. Companies are building huge data centers and labs across the U.S. Microsoft is building in Wisconsin, a few billion there. Google is building wherever they think they can get enough power out of the grid. Amazon is building in Indiana, huge. I think it's 1,200 acres. Meta is building in Ohio and Louisiana, while Oracle and OpenAI are expanding. What is the goal? It is intellectual dominance. They want to outdo the 100 trillion connections within the human brain and copy its capabilities that they don't really understand, haven't tapped, and that only need about 20 watts of power to run one of the most complex things in existence, the human body, and all of its emotions, insights, creativity, manual skills, artistic abilities, perceptions, ideas, inventiveness, language, dreams, healing, and regeneration capacities, multiple relationships, and genius. It seems to me that if we could spend a small fraction of the $500 billion going into AI on OI, original intelligence found in the human being, I think that kind of investment would pay off 10 times over as we move into our future. I'm not sure that AI can develop wisdom, but I'm damn sure that the human can. Number 11. Good news. The emergency use authorization for COVID-19 has been ended. Companies are no longer free to use it without permission. If they do so, they face significant financial and legal risk. I don't think the pharmaceutical companies need to worry much about finances. They've already made their billions of dollars on the jab. As for legal risk, they've long had complete freedom to produce and inject things into us with barely a shred of testing, but with full immunity from prosecution from the law. That hasn't changed yet. However, in the game of let's take out the deep state, the way that Trump plays the game may be that he plays along with them in order to catch them all in a sting. He would then prosecute them, stick them with gigantic fines, and allocate some of those fines to the government to help support it during times ahead when there is a much smaller government in place because almost everyone has been fired, and a much lower population, thus greatly reducing the tax money coming into the Treasury. In the case of a smaller population and lower taxes, that money from the big corporations will look mighty juicy, especially if it was gotten under, we'll say, questionable circumstances. Number 12, I love science news about accidental discoveries. And a couple of guys at Occidental College, how do you like that for symbolism? Accidental discoveries at Occidental College. Anyway, a couple of guys at Occidental College were experimenting with a way to reshape cartilage using lasers. They wanted to find a better way of improving eyesight with LASIK surgery. The cornea of the eye is mostly cartilage, and LASIK surgery makes small incisions that remove tissue from the cornea and cause it to reshape once the eye heals. The researchers, Michael Hill and Brian Wong, decided to scrap the laser and heat the cartilage with an electric current, but they accidentally set the electric current much lower than intended. When nothing seemed to be happening, Wong reached out and touched the cartilage to see if it was getting hot. Not only was it not hot, he discovered it was quite malleable. It could be reshaped and molded. This was an astounding discovery because it meant they could reshape the cornea to create perfect eyesight without the invasive incisions or tissue removal that occurred with a laser. When the electric current stops, the tissue just locks into its new configuration. They have successfully tested the procedure on the corneas of about a dozen rabbits and now need to proceed to live human studies. If successful, we may soon have a way to correct eyesight that does not require cutting into the cornea, does not result in dry eyes, which LASIK surgery does not affect the collagen structure of the eye, does not cause cellular necrosis, which is a risk, might even be reversible, may reverse corneal cloudiness, and may not ruin focusing ability. That focusing ability is something that requires a pre-surgical choice of whether you want that eye to see better up close or for distance. You have to decide that before your LASIK surgery. That's amazing. So we are learning how to use frequencies, something that will benefit all of us. And that is definitely good news. Number 13. I was so sorry to see Charlie Kirk's assassination. And my first reaction was a combination of deep dismay and sorrow, partly because of his death, and partly because of the clear intuition that this was a takedown operation. I knew it will be pinned on a young guy who had been carefully set up to take down Charlie. I saw it would be a big media event, a la George Floyd, and a political event used to further demonize the Democratic left while keeping the young people and the midterm elections tilted in favor of the Republicans. Later, when I heard that the New York Times and I think it was the LA Times had published the news of Kirk's death a day before he was shot, I wasn't surprised. I don't know why anyone thought it was a good idea to take out Charlie, but some of it appears to be political unity. Some of it was to create a martyr. Some of it was to shut him up. And some of it was to get access or at least be an advisor able to direct what to do with the millions of dollars Kirk had collected. Number 14, it looks like we will never see the Epstein lists, and we will not see much happen in the way of COVID prosecutions. First, most of the people on the Epstein list were set up and trapped into what they were being accused of, so they could be manipulated. Others were one-timers, exploring something new, and they were not serious perpetrators. Almost everyone was ensnared, but getting rid of everyone would collapse the government, and we still have a country to run. Second, those in government who pushed the shots were often people raised on early versions of vaccines who suffered no serious after effects. They didn't know that the shots had been changed, been weaponized, and they believed the people who were supposed to be the experts. Doctors in the medical field have listened to the CDC for their entire medical life. So they were used to big pharma salesmen offering more money to push a certain drug. This vax was nothing new. Now everybody is looking around for someone to blame, and there are a few key people who are responsible for the deception, but let's not get all caught up in blame and punishment and fail to see the good side of this debacle. And what is that good side? It's a new study on vaccines done by Dr. Marcus Zervos from Henry Ford Health Center in Detroit. This study from Dr. Zervos shows that vaccines result in a 400% increase in chronic disease in children. And that's not even all of it. This includes everything from asthma and ear infections to speech disorders. It shows a 616% increase in cancers, diabetes, allergies, ADHD, autism, learning disabilities, developmental delays, and other problems. Oh my. We need this kind of information and these truths in order to make better decisions for ourselves and our children in the future. A population that wants to survive, thrive, and evolve is not going to do so while using vaccines. The good news is the truth, and we can use this information to make life better. Number 15. I want to share a note of encouragement and gratitude, especially gratitude, to all those who got the jab and to all those who have been diagnosed with autism or Asperger's. We humans plan our lives before we come here. We plan our lives to a significant degree. Many of those who got the jab and have been struggling with their health were following their plan to make a huge sacrifice that will eventually benefit all of us. The same is true of those who came here knowing they would struggle with autism. The gift brought by those children with autism is that parents who love them and were desperate to communicate with them have resulted in things like the telepathy tapes and schools teaching children to be clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. This gift is tremendous. And it results in tremendous leaps in telepathy and the evolution of the human, something that would not have occurred without the autism driving it. So thank you. A second gift coming from autism was the discovery that any disruption or dysfunction in the human microbiome was directly related to consciousness and a whole host of physical conditions, from depression, obesity, and arthritis to cancers, diabetes, aging, communication, and even the quality of relationships. We cannot hold higher consciousness if we are sickly or dysfunctional. And the autism of so many people has pushed us to look in a direction that we will benefit from immensely. Those who got the jab, the shot in the arm, and ended up with things like hydrogels and self-assembling metallic arrays or altered DNA will be the driving reason behind research into frequencies leading to extraordinary healing techniques that dissolve those metallic arrays. Because there are so many people who have been affected, there will be an effort to help them, and that research will be done. It will be research that not only heals them, it then leads to the discovery of how to turn on latent DNA that brings additional capacities and potentials for the human, advancing us dramatically along the evolutionary path. These will be what we have called superhuman abilities and a stunning increase in intelligence. So yes, for now, we are vulnerable for a time with so many disabled by their conditions. But if we can navigate the dissolution of the old world, we can then build a new one at a whole new level of activity, culture, consciousness, health, and engagement around the planet. So thank you. Thank you to those thousands who made the sacrifice by choosing a life that would bring these gifts. And gratitude to those who made the choice to help exert evolutionary pressure that would move us all forward. Number 16. John Peterson, who departed this life on August 20th, had a message that I thought was for the Arlington Institute, but he has encouraged me to share it more widely. The message is, to those who have been interested in becoming a new human and in being here to build a new world, the message is, take the vision and make it real. The time for talk has passed. That was it. Take the vision and make it real. The time for talk has passed. So what he means is, it's time to start building something that you can see and touch, even if it means starting with yourself, okay? With your own body, your own life. Number 17, as we move into the future, it is important that we not jump to fearful conclusions about the people and events unfolding around us. A lot of good things happen, even in the midst of a lot of bad things. And this will be a good training ground for learning to bring out the best in one another. I'm thinking about all those stories of unexpected, often life-saving responses between German soldiers and American soldiers during the war. Or about videos I've seen of the care, love, and help going back and forth between big cats and humans, deer and big cats, horses and humans, birds and cats, dogs and people, people and bears, and so many other interactions that show us we're all basically good, loving creatures, whether we are two-legged, four-legged, or winged. Number 18. Speaking of engagement around the planet, you do know, I hope, that there are other kinds of humans here. We were totally ignorant of them for a long time. Then we developed the atomic bomb and let it blow. And they got upset because this is their planet too. So I leave you with something to ponder. Is this really our planet? And are we really in charge? Who else shares and controls the geography we walk around on and have always thought of it as ours? So that's it for this look-see. For those who are watching or listening for the first time, the look-see is a brief look at what is happening in our world and where the big trends are headed. Reality is not fixed, it's dynamic, and it changes according to what we're doing with our consciousness. Nothing becomes real until we make it real. We make a choice. We take some kind of action. We put something together or take it apart. Those decisive actions are what determine the path and the outcome. So, of course, once we set something in motion, it takes a lot to make a change or get things going in another direction. And that is exactly the reason for looking ahead. If we don't like the direction that things are going, we can make appropriate changes in a timely way or prepare for what looks inevitable. If we see something we like, we can put some conscious attention on that outcome and help it along. It's important to look ahead and assess what's happening and where we're going so we know whether or not we need to do something different. Thank you so much for listening. Keep your eyes open and your wits about you, and we'll see you in October. Take care.